So
A good intro.
once again, my presentation is divided in 5 parts. So first, I will give you an introduction, what we talk about, what's the domain and background, what we are focused on, and why we want to have a model repository, for example, models like BPNN and these things. Then I will talk about requirements for a solution for what I have in mind, what would be the best to get. In point 3, I will present my concept for such a library. And in point 4, I give a short proof of concept so far, what we have done. And at the end, I will summarize the main aspects. Okay, what I have in mind. We have an enterprise, can be a company, many people working there. And here it is blurred because we don't really know how the enterprise is working. And what we want to achieve is we want to improve the enterprise, the understanding of the enterprise, so it works better in a more fluent way and more controlled. And we have many people, they aggregate a lot of knowledge during their working time, during their lifetime, and they should somehow provide this knowledge for the next generation when people comes in the company and so on. So what we want to have, like in method and handling, to hand over all this knowledge and to have an enterprise which is clearly designed and in a structured way. So we imagine on a library, which is like a knowledge base, where we put in like BPN diagrams, also data diagrams, structured, a lot of artifacts. I will describe later what we have different kind of artifacts. And so we have like a control structure, directly workflows, who is responsible for what, and what data do we need in which working step and these things. Also the data models for the IT department. And all these things belong together and should be connected somehow together. So when the person wants to look at the company, he has a clear information and design how the company is working. And so a manager, the stakeholders also can have like a control on the company to change for new business areas and these things. So this is what we want to achieve, like a library, like a knowledge base for this information. Okay. When I talk about artifacts, usually we have 6 different types of artifacts. So we have typical rules, how is it working? We have visions about the design, the architecture of a company, outlines, and maybe standards we have to focus on. It's more IT driven, and also a lot of landscapes from the IT department, what is connected to what, and typical designs, models like BPNN diagrams and these things. And here in this presentation, we focus more on this part, on the landscapes and designs, on the models. Okay. I brought you one design, what I have created. It's like a reference architecture for identity management. Here it is layered from the top of the capabilities, goals, what we want to achieve over the business area, business layer, further down to the application layer, what types of IT systems do we have, further down to the technical structure, infrastructure, network, database servers, and these things. So this is a typical model, what we have from our IT department, which is here a reference design, what other companies could adapt. We also can have models for business flows, working flows, for the strategic area. And all this information should be aggregated in such a library. So when we look in the literature, we have a lot of frameworks for enterprise architecture and designing these things. For example, hopefully you know ITIL, this is widely common in IT department, and also TOGAF is a framework to design enterprises and how to make progress and have a controlled enterprise. Or ARIS, where also BPMN included. So this is typical. So all these frameworks are quite nice. They tell us how to do, what to do, but they don't tell us how to do it in detail. It's always nice if someone tells you what you should do, but not to tell you how to do it. So, and when we look in the requirements for such a library, we want to have like a sufficient documentation, and we want to put them all together, have a linkage between this information, and these library shall support the storage and reusability of these architecture designs and models. And for other persons, it should help to discover these designs, adapt these for reference, and also from the reference design to their specific needs in the enterprise, in their company, or in their industry area. So the database should help the others to find specific designs, so they don't need to recreate these things when others have done this, so they can directly adopt this, adapt, and adjust it. And in the end, we want to have like a linkage between versions and variants of these designs, so we have a reference and we can see how it developed, what's the background. And for our research, we have main two scientific questions. The first is, how can an enterprise architecture library be realized to support this sustainable approach through reuse of architecture components? And the other one is, what is the process of integration, integrated application for models via libraries through the life cycle? So from the start of the design of a model over the usage, and maybe later we don't need this anymore because the technology has changed. So we have other models which do it better right now. Maybe in history, we have monolithic structures of IT departments. Now we have quite agile microservices which can connect with each other. So old designs not needed mostly anymore. It will be replaced with new designs. So what do we see in the related work? Reference modeling, and these things exist since 1980s, so it's a quite long time. But here we have only the idea of reusable models. It's not really working in practical things. And there's also a standard for enterprise architecture and enterprise repository, but they also only describe the idea of such a repository. They don't really describe how it should work, what's also included in these things. And the large TOGAF frameworks, they also proclaim the existence of a repository. And here we have the design from TOGAF. They show us what should realized by such a library, what features it should have. But they don't really describe how it should be designed in detail, how the data should be managed, and these things. We only know there is a reference library, and it's connected to standards, and it's also connected to the enterprise landscape. The design for strategic architecture, segment architecture, and these things. And these components should be connected somehow, but they don't provide any solutions. We also have a military standard for us, the NATO architecture framework. It's similar to TOGAF process and these things, but also they don't explain it in detail. For who of you has listened about ITIL? The ITIL, we have the design of a configuration database, which is quite similar to the architecture repository, but ITIL also does describe the design or something like that. They just tell you, as IT department, create your own configuration database, manage it. How you do it, you have to figure out by yourself. So in the end, nevertheless, no detailed description of an enterprise architecture library or a model linking is provided. Which brings us to our concept, our design. So I have in mind like a 4-layered structure. On the top, we have a user. The user wants to have an easy access to the library. Usually we use web services for it, and also the designers should access the system somehow and create designs and enter enter the library. Then we have the application areas, the enterprise architecture itself. It should address 4 large fields. So we have to manage the access administration. Not every user should handle everything. We have to connect the modeling tools and analyzing tools for the library. We have to implement like a workflow, how the models should be processed, or like the entire artifacts should be processed in this library. And we have to maintain these things, data. When we further go down, we need like a database structure, sure. There's a reference design, how to store these designs, these artifacts based on XML. And yeah, we have to design the models in a way that it's easy to adapt it, to concatenate it, to integrate it. So we can, like have building blocks or bricks, put them together for larger designs. So it is easy to adapt to our own business area. And for the IT department, for the data storage, we need somehow a database, for example, like Git. We have versioning variants of these artifacts, and we can trace back where it comes from. So, and for our approach, we focus on the both middle areas, where I describe in detail how to design such an enterprise architecture library. For these data structures, we have categorized 3 types of metadata to describe such a model, to such an artifact, to find it again. Yeah, we have data which we can directly generate for a model. Yeah, the IDs, the version number, and these things. We have some core data to describe the model. Yeah, like a title, abstract, I will show you in detail. And we have some, in my mind, optional data, how to further describe an entry to the database to help the user, the customer, to take over. Okay. The automatic generated data for an entry, usually we have an identifier, so it can be referenced for the versioning and other things. We need a version number, which usually a scanning number with creation dates usually. We have a status. Yeah, the meta type of status should represent the phase in the life cycle. Is it already finished design? If it is a reference design, is it just for a work in progress currently? So we can choose a different status so the people know what to do with it. And then from the models, we have usually elements which are linked together. We can calculate complexity. So we with models less than 20 elements, we say usually it's easy to understand, easy to adapt. If it gets with much more elements, we talk about moderate or complex models. And also with the connectivity, when we have an average connection between these elements below than 2 connections, then it's quite easy to understand, simple to understand. If it gets higher, it gets very difficult. And these numbers are not directly for myself. It's adapted from other researchers and also from how humans can process. For example, these numbers are adapted or built in analogy from the length of sentences. So humans, for humans, it's easy if a sentence has less than 20 words. It's easy to understand. If you had very long sentences with more than 40 words, it's quite difficult to get the content, the sense of it. Yeah. And we should think on easy models, easy entries. So if it gets too complex or too difficult model, we should subdivide this model in parts, and it's easier to get, easier to handle. The core attributes for such an entry, usually you have a title for this model. We put the model in a specific category, if it is a reference design, if it is specific for a domain, or is it directly applicable for my own company. Also with the layer, here we mentioned, like if it is a model for business domain, or is it a model for the IT department, or is it somehow for the application area, we directly can adapt the layers from Archimate. It's a framework, and yeah, we use it for better description, so a customer can directly see if it is usable for me, if it fits or not. Then we have an abstract to describe what is this model about. Yeah, usually what problem is addressed, how the solution works, and what benefits get the user out of it. For better finding, we have usually keywords. Also with papers, we have specific keywords, and we need to set a specific responsible author who is responsible for further development, improvements, or bug fixing. We should set a specific contact point in the company, or to who's just responsible for it. And in the end, we need to model the artifact with the main content. These are the core attributes every entry in the database should have. And furthermore, we have adoptional attributes for just a library. For example, we have more explanation about the context, so it's easier to understand. Maybe also stakeholder matrix, which is usually to address when we have such an entry. And furthermore, like specific capabilities we address, or is there some restriction when we can't use this model, or what we give attention with side connection and these things. We also should trace the dependencies between models. So for example, if we change one entry in the database, one model with a new version, so all other aggregated models which use this should be informed to adapt the new version of it. So we have connection between these things. We can trace it. So we have to think about the dependencies. If it is an aggregated model, we can list the bricks which is made out of it, and we also can link the variants of different models. So we directly have maybe for a specific reference design adapted application models. And maybe as an example use case where it is used for, and maybe some references. How could be such a data structure look like? I directly adapted the design for the standard of product data management. This is a standard which is usually used for product lifecycle management. It comes from the mechanical area, but we can here directly adapt it. We have a master entry, and from this entry, we have a specific version and variant. And to this element, we can link the different variants and the different versions. And for a specific version and variant, we have the entry itself, it's describing the data, context, additional things, optional parts, and maybe a composite structure. Through this, we also can give some qualification or alternatives. Maybe a specific entry is released until 2023, or you also can use this until 2025. Until 2025, we have maybe another variant or new version how to adapt this. On the other side, we have the composition of these things. It works directly in the same way. We have composition, variant, and version. Can also aggregate it, linked, and through this composition we have the component data, which can be entry, revision, or the composition itself. So, and what's special for our enterprise architecture library is like the linking between these other. We have the reference, so we can easily trace back if something is changed, and then we can find a relation. Relation can be a replacement, can be a connection or general relation. So if something is changed, we can get it and we can improve it. Another part in my paper, we think about the life cycle, how to handle these designs. It's also divided into parts. We have usually a reference model design, and we have the model application, and these usually link together. So we start usually with a problem, identifying the use case. The problem should be described somehow, identified. For this specific problem, we design a reference model, we analyze this, and we can construct this model for a specific problem. Yeah, we can have a loop for optimization, analyzing, and doing some redesigns. Then when we are finished, we can release this reference design for model implementation. So we go over to application models. They go to the library, maybe find a specific problem. They have some specific requirements. Look in the library, if it match, they can take over. So, or they search after these requirements, and then they select a specific model, adapt it. And when we use this model, when we do some monitoring and control and maybe figure out how to improve this design. So we have a continuous improvement also to the reference design, or maybe we need to think about a better adaptation from this reference design. So we have a circle, and then we feed back to the entire life cycle. Okay. We have had some industry project, and we built such a library for them. And here you can see it's first prototype designed in Excel. We have some overview sheets where the reference designs are linked. And then we have a specific entry for a specific model design. So we have the core entry data and also the model and additional parts. Here we also have the description of the meta model. And so we can use it, adapt it. It's very helpful for the industry. So for example, in the IT department, they need to implement a new DNS service and these things. They have a reference design adapted. You also can link directly the configuration. So it's quite easy. Further prototypes are made also in Lexicon, Brain, or Charity. For me, I also like Charity. And yeah, these tools are not really directly designed for such a library, but they can be used for it. And in the next prototype, we try to use some wikis or Confluence where we maybe can directly model in this system. They have the standards integrated like BPNN and these things. Then it would be quite easier just to have a separate tool, design it, and then put it in the library. Furthermore, here's another example. This is a model from ITEL. It's about change management. And for that, here I have the example of the attributes to it. There's ID, specific version for ITEL 4. Status, it's released, you can use it. The complexity is medium, and also the connectivity is on average. So it's not too complex, but you can just it's quite usable, quite practical. Yeah, and we describe it with title category and these other core attributes. This is how it works. In the end, this is the first approach for an enterprise architecture library. We have a detailed description for the data structure, and we adopt the current standards, so we are compatible to other systems. We have a harmonized lifecycle for maintenance, and so we have reference designs and adapted model for a specific application area. We adhere to frameworks. They of TOGAF, ITIL, these frameworks, they don't describe it in detail. We do it now, and it's possible with implementation. It's possible to implement it. We have some prototypes, but we go further with a much more better implementation, hopefully with Confluent or such a wiki type. And yeah, you also can use this and adapt and customize it. So in the end, what we get is we made a possibility of an agile and adaptive enterprise architecture management. And in the end, for the future, we are thinking on a vision where you can have like matching between these models, and then it got automatically highlighted what is new in different version, which is replaced in different kinds of models. And yeah, this is what we are thinking further. Thank you very much.